It was one of those mornings where even the sky feels too heavy to look up at, a thick gray blanket pressing down on the small-town cemetery, matching the weight in everyone's chest. You could see in people's faces the way grief makes even the toughest among us seem fragile, sitting there shivering not from the cold but from the ache of loss. The little white casket at the front seemed impossibly small for the sea of flowers that surrounded it, lilies, daisies, her favorites, and the silence around it was absolute, broken only by quiet sniffling and the shuffle of feet on wet grass. I remember standing off to the side, not sure where to put my hands, just watching her father, this man who had always seemed so steady, so in control, clutching a folded piece of paper like it might anchor him in the storm. He hadn't slept in days, you could tell by the deep red rims around his eyes and the way his shoulders hung. When he finally stepped up to the microphone, you could almost feel everyone hold their breath at once, bracing for what they all knew was coming, but nobody wanted to hear. He opened his mouth and tried to sing her song, the same lullaby he'd sung every night since she was a toddler, a tune that had once filled their home with laughter and calm, but now his voice was raw, barely holding together, and on that first note, he cracked, just broke apart. Still, he kept going, squeezing his eyes shut like he could will himself back to those peaceful bedtime hours when her tiny hand would grab his, and she'd whisper, "Sing it again, Daddy." Every word felt like a stone dropped in a well, pulling him deeper with each verse, and by the end, he could hardly get the sound out, his body shaking so hard the microphone trembled in his grip. Somehow, he finished, and as he stepped back, the silence was so complete you'd swear even the world itself had stopped spinning for a minute. After the service, folks drifted away, one by one, some leaving flowers, others stopping for awkward hugs or gentle words, but the father just stood there, anchored beside that little casket, lost in memories. I caught glimpses of him staring off into space, and it was like you could almost see the scenes replaying in his mind or bedroom at dusk, crayons scattered, vanilla-scented air thick with imagination. She'd always been the artsy type, always sketching something, but lately it had just been this one thing, a white horse. Over and over, dozens, maybe hundreds of times. Sometimes proud and wild in a field, sometimes under the moon, sometimes curled up under a tree as if waiting for someone. I remember asking her about it once, back before she got sick, and she looked up from her drawing and said, "Because he's mine. You'll see him one day." Sweet, right? The kind of thing a kid says that you just chalk up to imagination, but the way she said it made you pause like she was in on some secret you weren't. And now, standing here, that simple line echoed back, so sharply it almost hurt. I wondered, not for the first time, why it was always the same horse and what it meant to her, but of course, some questions never get answered. The last folks to leave were family, some close friends, everyone else shuffled off, giving the father a wide berth, letting him have his grief. The air started to chill, a mist creeping in from the woods nearby, and the scene took on this dreamlike quality, like something out of story rather than real life. He just stood there, staring at the casket, his hands in his pockets, head bowed, and I wondered what it would take to bring him back from wherever he'd gone inside. That's when it happened. There was a sound, soft at first, almost like someone whispering your name from across a room, then clearer, a neigh, cutting through the hush. People turned, puzzled. Another neigh, louder now, and then the sound of hooves crunching gravel. You could feel the hairs on your arms stand up. And just like that, through the thin fog at the edge of the cemetery, a white horse stepped into view. You ever have one of those moments where your brain just refuses to catch up? Where you see something impossible, and for a split second you're convinced you're still dreaming. That was this. The horse's coat was so bright it almost glowed against the gloomy sky, its mane flowing like silk. It didn't act scared or lost. It walked right up slow, steady, stopping a few paces from the casket, eyes locked on the father. No one dared move. You could hear the click of a phone camera here and there, a hushed gasp, but mostly it was just quiet awe. The father, for a second, looked like he might collapse, gripping the edge of a chair for balance, but the horse didn't flinch. It just watched him, eyes deep and patient, and the resemblance hit all of us at once. This was her horse, the one she'd drawn, every detail right down to the little streak on its nose. The same horse she'd told him about. Some folks started whispering, trying to make sense of Itwo's horse was this? Where had it come from? But it didn't matter. For the father, it was like the world had shrunk down to just him, the casket, and this otherworldly animal. Then, as the mist thickened, the horse took a single step forward, tilting its head as if to say, I see you. The father, finally moving, took a shaky breath and stepped forward too, tears streaming down his face. The moment stretched, suspended, like time was holding its breath. And just then, clear as day, I swear I heard his daughter's voice in the wind. One day, Daddy, you'll see my white horse. You know what I mean? Sometimes you don't need proof, you just know. For what felt like forever, the horse stood there, unmoving, until finally it exhaled a soft, visible cloud in the cold morning air and turned, slow and graceful, toward the woods. It paused, gave one last lingering look back, and then, just as quietly as it had come, slipped away, its white coat melting into the mist. No one spoke for a long time. The father dropped to his knees, hands covering his face, not out of grief anymore, but something more like release. Around him, friends and family gathered, placing hands on his shoulders, but I think he barely noticed. He was somewhere else back in her bedroom, back in the quiet nights of song and sketches, back in the land of what-ifs and I wish. But this time, there was something new, a sense of peace like he'd finally been given the sign he didn't know he was waiting for. As the cemetery emptied, and the world returned to its ordinary gray rhythm, I watched him stand, wipe his eyes, and look out at the woods where the horse had disappeared. Maybe he saw nothing. Maybe he saw everything. All I know is he seemed lighter, like he'd been handed something nobody else could see, a piece of hope or a promise kept. And that's the thing about stories like this. You can argue with yourself all day, was it a miracle, a coincidence, someone's lost horse stumbling into the wrong place at the right time? Or was it something more, a message sent on the wings of love from somewhere just out of sight? So, let me ask you, though, you think signs from those we've lost can find us in ways we least expect, or is it just wishful thinking, the mind searching for meaning where there is none? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Who knows, maybe your story will be next.